Okay, well, welcome, Amy and Karen. We're going to have an interesting conversation today. This is Mother's Day weekend, and of course, that can be a tough weekend when we're reminded of so many of our losses. And I know how hard they are. I can certainly attest that they haven't been fun for me. But also, I also know that with the collapse of our current world, we're being invited to consider different dreams, ones that are healthier, more natural, and more grounded. So I thought I've been wanting to do this for a while now, this particular call about the changes we're going through and the new possibilities. And so I thought I would do it today. And I thought, it'd be nice on Mother's Day weekend to have something interesting to think about, something that would lead perhaps to you having some new ideas for your life. And, that might help you in this weekend and make it a little bit easier for you. So, in order to have dreams and desires that work for us, we need to have a handle on the world we live in. And um, I think that can be difficult to come by. And we also have to own our voice, and which is what we do with our energy, our attention, and our work, and what we give ourselves to. Welcome, Luna. So today's call is an overview of the current shift we're going through. So you have some understanding of the path we're on, and you can start to consider what give yourself to. This is very high on perspective. And so, I'm not going to tell you this is the thing you should do or this is the thing you should do, but I'm going to give you the kind of perspective that lets you make really good informed choices for yourself. The grieving process, I think, is an excellent time for this kind of introspection. And I particularly want to share this perspective because buried in all the social noise and the conflict, I think there will finally be more opportunities for sensitive people to find a place for themselves in the world. I don't have to tell you that major changes are underway. You can see that for yourself. I will suggest, however, that it may not be obvious what is actually happening. And I want to talk about this from a systemic but not a political point of view, because that is how we get our minds fully aligned with our inner voice, guide, or soul to create a world that works better for us. So I am going to go through this today. There will be a recording. We've already started the recording, and it's going to be uploaded onto YouTube as an unlisted video and then posted in the community for people who want to listen to the recording. So our agenda is, first of all, what's going on? Then we're going to talk about the necessities driving change. Then I'm going to go through the cultural roadmap. And then we're going to go have a peek into the kinds of changes we can expect. And then some ideas on how you might begin to find your place in a world that's basically going to become a totally new world. That we're going to go through a huge, huge, huge overhaul. So let's get started here with what's going on. Whoops, wait a minute. All right, come back to that. Okay, so right now we are at a turning point in human history. We're starting to see the fruits of largely destructive hierarchical systems, including the patriarchy, being confronted. These are highly territorial and exploitive cultural models that have criminalized the feminine, punished agency by defining it as disobedience, and laid claim to nature as an instrument of its will. It is fair to describe these hierarchies as unavailable for conversation, equality, relationship, and certainly the feminine. These older cultures, therefore, try to shut down the opening that's taking place. The voice of these cultures is very us versus them. One big challenge for those who have been marginalized is how do you claim and express your voice well in the face of such a shutdown? Often, when we're beginning to claim a voice, people start with grievances, and that's understandable. There are important grievances created by these patriarchal hierarchies. We also, however, need to move our voices beyond the us versus them dynamic. There are more opportunities to do that now than in the past. And that means you get to be more than oppositional. You get to be for something. And that's one of the beauties of this change we're going through, in my opinion. We get to be for something. We get out of the whole oppositional energy, which I think is very difficult for sensitive people. I think it's difficult for everybody in general. except for those who I guess who try to take advantage that way. But anyway, I think that's one of the things I love. You get to be for something. So I do that through a practice. I have a joy practice that I teach, and you can find out more about that on my personal website, mariaehill.com. And you can also connect with my Substack there. And so if you want to find out more about that, you can look there. So the patriarchy is self-serving, which makes it a perversion of the king archetype, which must serve the common good. All leaders have that responsibility without exception. The fact that it does not is why we have so much loss, often unnecessary, and why there can be so much fear. A lot of our inherited toxicity relates to the one-sided structure of the patriarchal hierarchies. All hierarchies are built on the idea that some are to be sacrificed for the benefit of others. And that is the source of a lot of the pain and anger that so many people feel in the world and feel like they just have no way to do something about that. And I think one of the stories of our time is how we're starting to deal with these particular one-sided, violent approaches to culture. And people are wanting, and I think over time will continue to demand something different. So it's not a hopeless situation. The mindset and the decision-making issues that come with the patriarchy are colliding with the reality of resource depletion, a problem of their own making, which is an important reason for current wars. Some countries have huge amounts of resources and will face attack by those who use natural resources as an instrument, not just of survival, but also of control. All of the political posturing masks the reality of resource wars, so it's important to understand that these resource wars will be a feature of our times, at least for some time. One of the most hopeful things I see right now is how the world is standing up and saying no to this. There's also a growing realization that we must deal with resource issues or these bloody wars will continue. It is beautiful to see the heart of the world showing up more openly. Nonetheless, there will be ongoing challenges, and you will benefit from getting your own resource needs under control as much as possible. It's important that you be as little a victim as possible. There's one thing I try to do is try to encourage people to do this, because that way they're minimizing the opportunity for somebody else to victimize them. And there are people who will want to try and do that. So in order to fully claim our lives and our dreams, we have to clear the claims of the essentially criminal patriarchy. We have to release false definitions of criminality around expressing our voices and claiming a self-identity that does not align with the authoritarian patriarchal model. It does not matter if you're male or female. We all have to clear out these false ideas of what is criminal and what isn't. It's not a good thing when the criminals are defining what is criminality. It generally doesn't work too well. So today we'll be getting a systemic overview of the current cultural shift, which will provide you with a perspective to help you direct your energies effectively. You want to be clear about what's going on systemically so you can navigate towards the safest, healthiest, and most joyful possibilities. You owe yourself that. Keep in mind, there's no right or wrong. You may want to make minor changes or major ones, whatever is appropriate for you. It only matters that you've had the chance to consider your choices and that they're right for you, and that you've worked out how you want to use your voice and your whys. So what we cover today will help you do that. So we need to understand the underlying conditions that are driving change right now, which is always based on necessity. A lot of people don't realize, they think change is just something, you pull out of thin air, but it's really driven by necessity. So I'm going to go through all of these, and hopefully this will make sense. So the necessity number one is capitalism consumes huge amounts of resources. It's not just material consumption that is the issue. Maintaining large production facilities and the support they require also consumes a lot of resources. A company is expected to be self-reliant and autonomous because there is a survival of the fittest mindset underpinning the culture. Think of it this way. If you're in a culture that requires total self-reliance, then nothing is shared. That means each person has to have all the supplies they need, from basic supplies to their transportation, to a lawnmower, whatever. And so they don't lean on somebody else. This is basically how it works in the capitalistic world. And this is how you create markets. This arrangement may have made sense when we had few people and many natural resources, but the reverse is true now and has to be addressed. The next is an obvious one. The earth is dying, and we can't let that happen. 6 decades ago, few imagined that the exponential growth in human population, combined with ideas about limitless growth, would cause a depletion of natural resources to the point where human life and the planet's life are now in peril. But it's not just our own lives at risk. The ecological systems that support us all have been fragmented by human encroachment, which in turn means that the natural interdependent ecology of all the species and their habitats are compromised to the point of extinction. Every single part of nature has a relationship with the other parts of nature. And it's like every single part, every single being, every single plant, they're all a part of what constitutes the support and the aliveness of the ecosystem. You start taking out pieces of that, the supports are not there for other creatures. And so therefore they become extinct, and then others become extinct. And it's sort of like a domino effect. And in fragmenting nature in order for humans to set up their housing developments or whatever, we've done a huge damage to our ecosystems. Even if the trees are standing and we see some wildlife, we're not being honest with ourselves about the damage that is being done. The next is hierarchical systems are not responsive to changing conditions. Our current system is built around bigness because it takes big markets to make materialism viable. We have big institutions in every area of life controlled by a limited number of managers. This arrangement excludes a lot of voices and limits one's ability to claim a seat at the table. Worthiness is really not the issue. Power and control are. Because top-down hierarchies are removed from the realities on the ground, decision-making can be slow, unresponsive, and often just plain wrong. They're just out of touch. Given our extreme challenges, we need a more grounded, practical, and responsive approach to managing ourselves and our lives and the world we live in. People are ready for a shared, responsive, and practical way of living and managing. I think more people are ready for that than is currently exposed within our social space. I don't think there's enough attention paid to that. Number 4, we cannot afford short-sightedness anymore. The intense capitalistic system is cumbersome and requires a lot of support. It's also defensive and self-protective, and therefore short-sighted. Our environmental and other challenges demand that we start thinking much more long-term and become very practical and resource smart, which will help us restore the health of our planet and reduce economic stresses on people. I think that's going to be inevitable. Number 5, we have to be able to solve our problems. It's amazing, but nonetheless, the reality right now is that often the interests of major market players can preempt the needs of individuals to solve their problems for themselves locally. The area of pesticides has been one market segment that's been able to prevail in demanding that farmers use pesticides they may not want in order to protect the agricultural chemical market. This way of thinking that protecting the market is more important than the well-being of planet or people, or that decisions for one's well-being can be preempted by people and institutions far away from you, is not sustainable, especially since top-down organizations are notoriously unresponsive and frequently cause harm. We need to be able to solve our problems where they occur without having to start a movement to do so. Just saying. I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. If we wanted to solve a problem, it's almost like we have to start a movement, and there's no guarantee it'll get you anywhere. It's absolute craziness. Number 6, enclosure is creating deprivation. Now, scarcity is not just a mindset. It's something that's been created by privatizing natural resources. Enclosure, which is something that David Bollier of the Commons movement talks about, is the process by which natural resources like land and what's on them are enclosed or privatized for the benefit of one person or a group of people. If enough resources are removed from general availability, then most people don't have access to the resources necessary to take care of themselves. And this creates a variety of behaviors and situations that are damaging. For one, widespread dependency. If people don't have access to the resources for their basic needs, then they're dependent and made generally one down. They may also have difficulty accessing the resources necessary to improve their situation. For all the talk about empowerment, we have been disempowering people more than we care to admit. And I think that's something that has to change, and is people are taking their lives back and changing things. Barriers to access and gatekeeping. Barriers to access, from physical fencing to educational credentialing, concentrate resources in the hands of a few. The requirements for access can be arbitrary, and that can create a culture of people pleasing. Some of the demands that people have for inclusion, whether it's a credential of this kind or another kind, they get to be a little bit ridiculous sometimes. And then there's also health issues, when dignity and self-respect are not possible. If people cannot find a way to live that is good for them, they will have difficulties, mental and otherwise. The way health issues are framed is hurtful to people. Too often, we personalize problems that are really the consequences of systemic issues, making people who are suffering wrong, so we don't have to make important and necessary changes. So that's the lay of the land. So now you need to understand systemically how we got here and where we are going. So this is the next part. We're going to talk about the spiral. And I'm going to go through this as a story, because I would like you to have a sense of the flow of this over time, so you see it as a story. Spiral is the shortened phrase for spiral dynamics. It was developed by Dr. Clare Graves, a psychology professor at Utica College in New York, through his research on how his students defined their identity. And over time, he noticed a lot of similarities in how students defined what life is all about. And from that, he was able to develop the spiral of human cultural development. There is a lot to the spiral. Spiral Dynamics is a book that I recommend. It's quite thick, and there's much more to it that I'm going to cover today, because I'm more interested in having you to see this as a story, so it starts to make sense how we got to where we are. But there is a lot of interesting complexity in there. And the more you understand about the spiral, the less you blame yourself when things don't work right. There's a lot of blame that we get, when things don't work right. One of the things I love about the spiral, and it's one of the things that's benefited me, is that it takes me out of blame, and there are a lot of things I don't blame myself for that somebody else might think is my fault, but that's not my problem. And it really helps you to get a perspective that makes it easier for you to let go of those kinds of dynamics. So anyway, I highly recommend the book. So we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to talk about what it tells us about the next steps of the human race. As you can see, it's a spiral shape, or it may look like a horn to you. The shape is important because on the top is the individualistic cultural systems in the warmer colors, and on the bottom, the communal ones in the cooler colors. We alternate between communal and individualistic systems, which build on each other. And each step is an expansion. So they come into being, we develop some skills, then we take the next step, and we just keep building on these things. Each time we expand what we consider relevant and what we'll deal with, and we increase our skills in a certain way of life. And there are important benefits to this arrangement. Each system can focus only on one or the other, communal or individualistic, because each develops a new set of skills, and you can only develop so many skills at once. So, capitalism has been very entrepreneurial, and it's developed science skills and all those kinds of business skills. We may have run amok, but still they're good skills. And it would not be possible to do all of that and then also maybe do some other communal kind of new skill at the same time. It would probably be a mess. So we can only really focus on one step at a time. It also takes a long time to develop a new cultural system. So this is another benefit of this approach. So a current system will be doing its thing, and while it exists, a new system will be developing. And they develop under the radar because they need the time for trial and error to try to figure out what would be a better way in the future. And so we have an individualistic capitalistic system right now. For a long time, we've also had people working on what is the next communal system going to be like, and what should it be like. So that's something that's been going on under the radar. And every once in a while it pokes up its head, like in the 60s, while people are experimenting and get swatted down. But nonetheless, there is a long process, but eventually we get there and the new system emerges. And I think we're about there right now. There are 8 known stages of the spiral. There are a few others that people have identified, but these are the main ones right now. And they're organized into tiers of 6 meme or cultural systems. Each system is the dominant system for a time, and then it's replaced by a new one, which brings new solutions to new problems. You'll see this blue line where it says first tier and second tier. That's the boundary between the first tier, which is about survival, and the new one that is emerging. And so we're close to getting into the egalitarian as a dominant theme because capitalism is on its way out. So we're close to that. There is going to be a different theme coming up in the second tier. So survival as the primary issue is going to be going away. Now, I would imagine to many people, you might think I'm crazy saying that with all the wars going on, but that's part of the problem we have, that some people cannot adjust to the fact that we have survived and it's time to stop with this survival stuff and these wars. Anyway, be that as it may, the second tier, I believe, is going to be on the subject of thriving. Thriving is a very different approach to life than survival, which is very short-sighted, and we'll be talking about that more. So the word meme describes an element of a culture or system of behavior that may be considered to be passed from one individual to another by non or genetic means, generally by imitation. And we see it in viral ideas on social media. But meme systems, and these are meme systems, are social systems around a group purpose, which is the defining meme idea for the group, which is replicated throughout the social system. So each system has its own story about what life is all about and what its purpose is. So capitalism is material well-being through science and progress. That's its main core idea. And that's replicated throughout all aspects of the culture. And every single system does that. Our identity is shaped to a large degree by our experience with our early cultural system. Often we say that I stay with that identity throughout our lives. But when going through a cultural shift like now, we have the opportunity to take the skills we've learned in one stage and build on them by transitioning to the next stage. And we have a huge transition going on. And this is a good time to be able to think about, well, what could I do differently? And find others who are doing the same thing that you would be doing. So we're going to go through the spiral as an evolutional story, so you can get a sense of how it evolved and is evolving. And we're going to start on the left with the beige one, which is survival sense. And I'm going to identify them by the color, which is really a shorthand name. There's some complicated letter identifications for these particular systems, but we don't need that for today. And so we're just going to start with the colors, and you'll be able to follow this on the chart. So let's go through the story so you can see the journey. So the beige survival sense is a subsistence stage where people are grouped in small loose bands. They're nomadic hunter-gatherers and naturally therefore have few possessions. They move around in order to find food in the form of berries and game. They live in caves or cave-like dwellings that they build. Each day, their energy is consumed by looking for food, avoiding getting killed by animals and perhaps other individuals. And when not looking for food, they may be making their own weapons to kill game and other animals for food and clothing, or they might be building a small cave-like home from stones and wood that they gather. But every day is essentially focused on the basic necessities around surviving. And at beige, you have to keep it real, focus only on what matters for survival. They have to pay a lot of attention to their environment and learn to read footprints of all kinds and other signs of life. They have to investigate plants to eat, and that may not always turn out so well if it's not a good plant. They work with raw materials to create tools and dwellings. Their life is mostly physical labor, but they have a huge amount of risk and very few defenses. This level began about 100,000 years ago and is rarely found today. If it is, it's in people who have suffered a tragedy of some kind. For example, people who are homeless or refugees may fall into this group. I personally think this stage is very underrated. They have serious nature and groundedness skills that we have lost and could use. When we cover the second tier in a few minutes, we'll be revisiting this stage, and you'll notice the similarities between the yellow one that we're going to talk about and this particular stage. So it's a very practical and low fuss stage of the spiral. It sticks to the knitting in life, and what is needed and necessary occupies their attention, and there is a lot of merit and some real benefits to being that way, especially right now where our ability to meet basic needs is being called into question. So that's beige, and it's going to become more and more important as we move forward. The next one is the purple tribe, which began about 50,000 years ago. It's the first communal meme system and is the starting point for all communal meme systems. At some point, the little band in the beige survival group is not so little anymore. You may have developed some farming skills. You may want to think about settling somewhere where you can protect some of your crops. You may also find that teaming with other bands is a smarter way to live and reduce your vulnerability. But whatever the reasons, you get together with others and you create what's called a tribe. Now, the social side of life becomes more important because the tribe is a larger group of different families and people need to get along. These tribes are often created from more than one band or family, so they have to find a way to bring together these different groups of people who may not know each other well, if at all. Becoming a tribe is not a small matter. People in the early tribes did not have it easy. They were pre-literate, and so they have limited language skills, although they developed sound-based ways of communicating. And if you have different sound-based languages, that could be a challenge. I mean, you might put out a sound that might be an insult to another person from another tribe without, really intending to do any harm. So, it can be really tricky. The tribe seeks safety through numbers, and they have a communal structure based on this collection of families. These interconnected families protect each other through reciprocal obligations to ensure that everyone is supported and taken care of. Everybody is invested in the community through these reciprocal obligations, which may include arranged marriage. Reciprocity is the basis of trust in the tribe. They identify their tribe as us, and they take care of us, and they have strong us versus them thinking. These ideas about reciprocity and who is us and who is not are still alive in modern life and sometimes manifest in dangerous ways in the present. So this is really probably the origin of the us versus them. So people put tribes on a pedestal, and there are a lot of wonderful skills they have, but there are things like the us versus them thinking, which is not particularly helpful anymore. Daily life in a tribe is about maintaining relationships, doing the basic work of the tribe, and creating and putting on rituals for the various times of the year and the various events that cement the tribe. So each day you get up early, you prepare your food, and you eat, and you do your daily work. You spend time connecting with others through the daily events and the elaborate rituals and festivals. People connect a lot with each other and with nature and seasons because they still have a very close relationship with nature. Life centers fully around the tribe and nature, and it has a flowing quality to it, which is lovely. If you ever go visit a place where there's a lot of there are a lot of tribes. I was in Bali once, and I noticed that kind of flowing energy. It was really quite lovely. So the basic components of the tribe, in addition to taking care of basic necessities, are creating a shared language, reciprocal obligations, and rituals and other ways for the tribe to cement their particular social arrangement. Safety comes from healthy blood and family relationships, but also from obeying mystical spirit beings. When the tribe is created, people are beginning to move beyond subsistence thinking, and they're starting to develop a relationship with the universe. They have enough people and some survival needs met, so they start to wonder about the universe and their place in it. The spirit of wonder we all have as children is one of the pronounced qualities of people in the tribe. Oh, sorry. Lou is in the waiting room. I just admitted her. Okay. I guess there she is. Okay. They create a story about how they came to be and who their ancestors are, and stories about animals and plants from their close connection with nature. These stories become their truth about life and inform their choices. They become a way of bonding and teaching. And they become a part of all these rituals and festivals, all of these ideas about the ancestors and all, they become part of their rituals and a form of bonding in the tribe. And the way you could say that they've taken the skills they had connecting with nature in the survival band and have used that experience and knowledge to identify a story about themselves and life, which comes from their new intuitive animistic approach to life, where they experience the aliveness of all life forms. And this is an important part of this kind of communal system. It's a quality that many sensitive people can identify with. And there are many different examples. One of the better known ones is Aboriginal Dreamtime. And the artwork that comes out of these communities can be really wonderful. So tribes create stories about animals and their characteristics as a learning tool and try to draw the strengths in animals to themselves. Nature is alive. It's a home and a teacher also. Native American coyote stories, Aesop's fables, are examples of stories that become teaching vehicles. This is how they pass on knowledge through oral tribal traditions. And although knowledge is rudimentary, they are nonetheless sticking their toes in the life stream beyond subsistence by trying to understand the world and cause and effect. Tribes are highly right-brained, intuitive, and mystical, but essentially, because it's us versus them, it's a closed world. The tribal world will have important gifts for us in trying to develop a new culture. Its intuitive connection with the aliveness of nature, sense of wonder, its intuitive skills will matter. We will need to draw from them in creating a new common language, at least an understanding of the challenges of that, and stories and rituals for a new system. So these two systems will be very important as we transition to any story for the human race. I wanted to highlight these two in particular. The movie Clan of the Cave Bear is a good one for understanding the beige level. And I love the movie Tana for the tribal one. It's a really beautiful story, and you get a sense of the way tribes work from that particular movie. All right, so the next one is Red. Red is the Empire. It's where we find gangs, and it's also where we find the mafia. Generally not everyone's favorite stage. It began about 10,000 years ago. It is still pre-literate because literacy begins about 3500 BCE. As time goes on, an individual recognizes that the tribe and its practices are not always right, and perhaps that the ancestors, the rituals, and the hexes don't always protect them. They start wanting to take direct action. They begin to see the gods as less than perfect, and that perhaps they can influence the gods or the ancestors on their own, like making their own deals with them. They discover their own power and begin the journey to developing competence. There's a big downside to this stage of development, which is also fairly primitive in many ways. However, it is where we begin to take control of ourselves, to develop strength, something to offer, and competence. So the stage also has its benefits to give to the world if we can identify and channel the aggressive energies it unleashes. Life in the Red Empire meme is totally different from the tribe. Every day in this system is a contest to beat someone or something. Life is considered a test in a jungle full of dangers, and you want to be the strong one who emerges victorious. You're alone in a harsh world, and the thinking is that life is about the survival of the fittest. Red people have a strong conquest hero drive. The energy is conquering. Red people can take control and treat people in the tribes like slaves. They do not like rules and constraints for themselves, but they have no problem exploiting you. If something goes wrong, they'll blame. If you're beaten in a contest, it's because you're weak. They want respect and will punish anyone who goes against them and does something they don't like. People in this stage can be very vindictive. Not that others cannot be as well, but this is a particular feature of this particular stage. Many people at this stage develop physical skills related to fighting or other kinds of physical self-testing. It's a warrior meme system with an empire-like cultural structure. At this stage, they're quite impulsive. They don't plan. They prefer to live for the moment. They're brash and short-sighted, but also creative in trying new ideas and testing limits. Rock bands are an example of people at this particular stage. This stage can be provocative, exploring, and exploitive. It's the home of machismo, testing oneself, heroism, and conquest. Grandiosity and brutality are common. It's the big downside. As long as people at the red stage have others to exploit, they'll continue. However, when doubts and guilt start to creep in, and the slaves defect, which I highly recommend, all slaves should defect, a red person may start to move to the blue level of the spiral, which is the next stage. Red is a difficult stage of the spiral for everyone, especially sensitive people, but it does have a couple of gifts. This meme system is the second individualistic meme system. and it expects each person to use initiative. If you reject this stage, then it becomes harder to access and respect that part of you that has initiative. So you have to find a way to find something good about it in order to not totally reject it so you have the benefits of what's good about it. We'll need initiative if we're to create a new cultural system. So, and it's also highly creative, and we will need creativity in developing new ways of living and working. Authoritarian systems, which we've been under for quite some time, don't like creativity. So that is something from this particular stage that you can, as a benefit, it's a gift of it that is worth incorporating into your life and embracing. So the next one is the blue authoritarian one. So when people get tired of the red destructiveness, they have to invent a new stage to control it. And in comes the blue authoritarian stage, the second communal meme, which first began about 5,000 years ago. They say in the spiral world that it's only the fear of God that will contain violent red, and there is truth to that. From the standpoint of a red person, we against the world can get lonely, and it's dangerous. You get older at some point, it doesn't work. You may get tired of fighting all the time, though some people don't seem to mind. And because the red stage is so impulsive, people, they're very impulsive people. They lack the discipline to see anything through. So they put the burden of discipline on others. And when others get tired of that arrangement, the red meme individuals can become very vulnerable. And some of them will decide to change, only some. There comes a point for everyone. If they want more out of life, they need to develop self-discipline and skills. So people at the red stage find, some of them anyway, that decide that they're going to move to the next level in order to do that. And it might seem counterintuitive for someone to go from the impulsive, violent red to authoritarian, disciplined blue, but blue offers a support system, and it offers you the chance to develop self-discipline and deeper skills, something that any red hero really needs to learn. The idea behind blue is to sacrifice now to enjoy later. It's deferred gratification. The hero drive is transformed in the service of an almighty God in the one true way, whatever that happens to be. So the red conqueror becomes the blue crusader, and they get the added relief of no longer having to figure everything out. It's been done for them. So they get to be a hero without a lot of the risk. Blue is authoritarian and hierarchical. The earliest systems were hierarchical also, but blue is much more structured in its authoritarianism. And under the blue system, everyone has their place. Now, it's not just religions who are like this. Military systems are like this, and others that have military structures are also considered authoritarian. So, but many of the major religions are considered authoritarian. So just keep that in mind. When we say the one true way is probably the best way to look at it. There is an idea of the right way to do things, and some religions offer that, but there are also other kinds of organizations that do. So it's not just about religion. So under the blue system, everyone has their place, there are rules, and one is punished for disobedience. Each day is ordered around church, family, and work. Life has a purpose, and as long as you stay in your place and do as you're told, you're safe and supported. The energy is reverent, it's obedient, but unfortunately, it's also quite punitive. People appreciate each other in the blue level, which is actually enjoyable and even refreshing after brutal red. It's like family on a larger scale. They have a family of shared beliefs. So it does become a form of bond, having these shared beliefs of in whatever way they show up. It's true of all the meme systems that they expand as they move forward in their views and also what they consider relevant. So the tribe's immediate family now becomes a family of people with shared beliefs. So they enlarge what they include in what they call family. People at the blue stage are often called the salt of the earth because they're very down to earth and often humble people. There is predictability at this stage, which helps people feel comfortable, especially after raging red destructiveness. It's a system that reinforces ideas and beliefs, which give it coherence. So if you can get a lot of people marching in one direction, you've created reality. It doesn't really matter, what the direction is, but if you can get a lot of people marching in one direction, you create a reality by people doing things a certain way. For some, the order is a relief, and life seems to have a purpose again after red. However, intolerance and self-sacrifice create problems. When the church or other authority is wrong, it's questioned, eroding trust. And over time, some people begin to want to live by their own authority again, once there is stability, which blue creates. That is an important benefit that blue brings to the table. And it shouldn't be understated, the value of that, because that becomes a springboard. It's kind of in the middle of the whole tier, going from the survival sense at beige through to green to the next stage. It's really kind of in the middle, and it becomes a springboard for additional growth. So anyway, people start to want to live by their own authority again. And so they venture forth into the next system, which is orange. Many people are fed up with this stage of the authoritarian blue of the spiral because of its rigid dogmatism. However, it does have something important to offer us in life. It offers us a chance to learn self-discipline, as well as understanding that a certain amount of order is important. Some people throw out the idea of order, sort of like throw out the baby with the bathwater on the subject of discipline and order. The antithesis of order is chaos, and some chaos or drama is actually sabotage. We have chaos creating people running around in our culture here in the United States, and they are destabilizing. So the antithesis of order is chaos, and some chaos is actually sabotage. So we need to find a way to have the order, but we need it without the sabotage to move forward. So that's an important thing to think about: what order is valuable, necessary, and what is overdone. So the next stage that comes after blue is the orange achievement and entrepreneurial stage. It's the meme we're in, which started about 1,000 years ago, and it's the one we're most familiar with because we're in it. The orange meme system started to develop when people began to seek a reliable way to develop knowledge independent of superstition and authorities who were often wrong, and so they developed the scientific process. To many, authority can be arbitrary, and science and data help us discover facts independent of personal desires and agendas. Science, which is fact-seeking, became a tool to help people move out of the relative safety of blue, and it created a way to move forward. The independence that the orange system offers is great, but you still need some support, you still need co-workers, and some way to manage risks. So science provides information and methods for individuals to work together beyond a set of shared beliefs. So there's a greater openness to information. People at the orange level are self-motivated and interested in progress and accomplishment. They use their creativity and strategic thinking and optimizing of results, and it's highly competitive. It seeks technological solutions to improve life. That's certainly visible in our world right now. And where red is about conquering haves and vanquishing have-nots, and blue the one true way, orange reveres the Horatio Alger self-made hero, the entrepreneur who creates something against the odds. It's the third individualistic meme. It does focus on competence and developing competence in a new way. It reinvents the hero and applies it primarily to commerce. People at various stages of orange can be very brash and combative, like red, although it's more sophisticated and shows up in social competition and the clash of ideas. And often people here are self-absorbed, not at all altruistic unless it serves their interests because they believe in individualistic autonomy. Many are Ayn Rand followers. On the plus side, orange is more open to multiplicity, in other words, variety, because it develops many markets and the complex organizations that serve them. It's less rigid than blue, and it's more creative. So the creativity in the orange system is something that the blue authoritarian world does not like very much. Daily life in the orange meme system can feel like a grind, since this stage is capitalism. It's also the industrial age. The energy of industry is the energy of orange. Orange energy is pounding and constant. The energy of orange is the energy of the machine. Because people are being replaced by machines, many feel they have to always up their productivity, almost as if they're competing against machines. So orange life is about seeking success and status, and thinks life is all about winning an image. The people at this stage don't like the neediness from others because that means they may lose their place on the success ladder. Like red, it's a lonely meme filled with contests and judgments, and a need to avoid losing the upper hand in a dog-eat-dog competition. And when the loneliness and the exhaustion take their toll and guilt about excesses sets in, orange turns to the next stage, which is green. The orange meme offers us important benefits, which we need to carry forward. It helps us develop the ability to build something or to be a part of building something, which is useful. It also recognizes differences in a way that has not been allowed in the past and sets the stage for the inclusivity of the next meme system, which is the green egalitarian one. Green is the emergent level of the spiral. We're in the process of moving into that. It's a new third communal level, which began about 150 years ago, and it seeks to promote unity and community among all and liberate us from dogma and greed. Sounds very noble. It invents a humane hero. It's the final stage of tier one, and therefore I call it a culminating meme system. Green is a communal energy. It's the energy of acceptance and non-judgment. It's consensual. Where the purple communal meme is about us versus them and family focused. And the blue communal meme is communal around the one true way. Green is all about the inclusiveness of everyone and everything. In other words, everyone is beautiful in their own way. Green life is about learning to be, healing inner wounds in oneself, and healing the damage to animals and the planet. It seeks consensus in all decisions and having all voices heard. So it's very democratic. And this is the first time we've had any kind of move into a democratic way of being. So it tells you that democracy is actually relatively new. And there is a relationship between this kind of openness and inclusiveness and democracy. And the next tier, which is about thriving, they all need to work together. Many people entering the green level are exhausted from too much work or stuff. So centering, healing, and practices like meditation become a big part of the green life. This meme system is emerging at a time when the harm to people and earth are in great need of repair. It has a formidable task to manage a transition to inclusiveness, equality, and healing the planet and people all at once. This is the most empathetic meme so far because it invests in behaviors that include others. Togetherness, harmony, acceptance drive decision. It is okay to be different. However, in the interest of harmony and inclusiveness, it can be hard sometimes to arrive at decisions and take action. So people do get bogged down sometimes in green consensus building. Even the green meme does not solve all problems. The demands for harmony take a lot of energy, and at some point, the need emerges for new solutions. So when people are dissatisfied with the green level's ability to create both harmony and solve the challenges of diversity and other problems, they're ready for a new individual meme, and they're starting over in the second tier, learning about patterns and how to work with them. So the green meme is a meme stage that is evident in the Western world in some places, but not everywhere. Keep in mind, we're at the end of the survival story as our primary narrative. So you hear about thriving, you hear about abundance and things like that. But you need to understand that about thriving and abundance, that's not survival with money. Abundance and thriving are very different approaches to life from survival. So it's important to keep that in mind. So we have to heal and let go of all of the sins of the past and take with us into the future the gifts of the earlier human beings, which we've talked about a little bit today. However, because of the delays in addressing climate and environmental issues, some, including me, think that we will have to combine the transition to the green stage and the next stage, yellow, at the same time. So let's take a look at yellow. So yellow emerged about 50 years ago, maybe 50 to 75 years ago. Green offers inclusiveness and the healing of inequities, but life needs to work, and healing wounds is not the same as getting something done. All of the social conflicts of the first tier start to diminish in importance to be replaced by just being here and the magnificence of life. Living simply and appreciatively are more important than anything else. Yellow is the starting over meme. It is inner directed and it does not need glory. It learns where and what it needs to live simply and is not self-sacrificing, but it's not splashy either. There's you can see how the beige that we first talked about and the yellow, there's a lot of similarities between them. It's very grounded. It's kind of inner directed autonomy. There's no need to control others. It's interested in systems and how they work and how they can be improved. Yellow is not mainstream, so we can't yet point to it as an established system. It's very emergent. It is, however, curious. It's practical. It's still accepting of self and others, but it's accepting in a different way than the green level, in that it allows individual memes their space, even while trying to work with them. So it doesn't try to change people in the earlier meme systems. Where the first tier strong arms people into conforming a lot, the yellow meme system wants to bring out the best in each. And so it tries to understand the patterns and what works with each one of these different meme systems to see when they're of value and when not, and where they're destructive and where they're not helpful. So the need and desire to use force is going away with this meme system, which I think is a huge improvement. It's called Flex Flow because it has an ecological perspective about differences. So it looks for ways to make things work without trying to force people and systems to be what they're not and cannot be. It is a starting over meme system, which will go back to basics and look for different ways to make life work for people on the planet. And eventually, people work with this and realize they have developed some skills, but they also need to work with others because they cannot change everything by themselves. And so they start to move towards the next level, which is turquoise, and that's the last one we'll talk about today. Turquoise is the first communal meme in the second tier, and there's a lot of commonality between the tribal system, purple, and this one. A person at this stage sees less is more. So there is this theme of less is more, both in the yellow and the turquoise system. So that is going to become an important theme. Global whole spiral networking is routine. This person is able to be communitarian and respect individual rights. It has a new spirituality based on the awe of the universe and is comfortable with the mystery of life and that you cannot ever know everything. So there goes perfectionism, which is wonderful. So that's a brief journey through the history of the spiral. This is a huge shift. We'll have to rethink how we see ourselves and who we want to be in the world, where the warrior mindset is actually destroying us. The warrior energy will not be helpful in a more collaborative world, and many who subscribe to that mindset feel diminished if they have to work and collaborate with others, especially those who are different or those they consider of lower rank. So it's a huge shift in hierarchy and social competition that's going to be going on. Consciousness raising is great, but we also need to create new skills for a world with new and different requirements. The great turning that Joanna Macy talks about is here. And in addition to our healing work, we also need to develop the collaboration skills that will make this great turning possible. One of the reasons cultural change takes so long is that the time necessary to develop new skills. So that's kind of one. Sometimes if you're feeling impatient and you're wondering why things are taking so long, sometimes it just takes us that long to develop the new skills that will enable us to, do things differently. And it's okay to respect that. And if you don't have all the skills that you wish you had, it's okay. Because we have to become much more resource smart. Oh, okay, awesome. You can expect a more bottoms-up culture so that more needs are met locally and more resources are shared to reduce unnecessary consumption. We will be working less and playing more. We will also need to reduce the unnecessary competition that can drive consumption and restore social justice and social equity as part of our practice for healing the planet. Human enterprise will become more collaborative. The commons, which has been decimated by privatization, will have to be restored. You can expect a return to nature and more simple living out of necessity. Spirituality will become more important with a greater acceptance of the many different ways in which it can be expressed. People want to be released from the grind. So that's just an outline of the possibilities. You can look to cultures like the Nordic countries and the Netherlands for inspiration, since they've already started down the path, at least economically and socially. So before I move on to the last piece, Karen, do you have anything you wanted to ask or any thoughts?
Yes, Maria, I'm curious as to, and I know it's probably a lot to answer in this one question, but I would love to know where you're getting this information, and I'm sure it's a lot of sources, but if it's
Spiral dynamics.
Spiral dynamics?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
There's a book out called Spiral Dynamics, and it's very deep. So I'm really just scratching the surface here to give you kind of an outline of the story. And I have worked with the energies of these particular meme systems. So I combine spiral dynamics with my own energy work to give you the story.
Thank you.
Okay, so systems change. The current system lacks reciprocity. It's very linear and dense in its consumption. It's a resource hog and it's very wasteful. The linear model does not recognize the need for maintenance, renewal, and rejuvenation. It's a take, make, and toss model. It's about extraction, production, and the accumulation of money. You may have felt the discomfort of someone relating to you in an extractive way. It's quite dehumanizing. We need to change to a more circular process because we have to. When we do, we're going to be integrating into our culture in the world long overdue maintenance and renewal needs. These long overdue priorities will consume a lot of resources, financial and otherwise. We're going to have to be resource smart, so repairing and reusing will be important. To reduce the use of natural resources, we will also need to convert trash in our landfills into materials that can be reused. So we have the material technology to do so, but we will need to be able to find a way to be more resource smart. On an ancillary note, the high consumption model means that products are made with built-in obsolescence. We're going to have to take the opposite approach and create products that don't break so easily, so they have a longer life. This kind of long-sighted thinking will reduce consumption and GDP, give the earth a break, and also us, since we will not need to work so hard to continually buy products that break down so easily. Many people are making their own food and clothes now. The maker culture is one facet of this change, and I think you're going to see more and more of that. So this will be a kinder world and will help all of us with our needs for rest and restoration at the same time. So we are going to have a reorganization. Our top-down global structure will be changing in some ways. The top-down command and control structure will be replaced by a more collaborative network structure, at least in some areas. It's a structure that will require a certain amount of wisdom to be truly effective. Individuality matters, but so does the common good. So we're going to have a rebalancing there. And because of our need to be more collaborative, you're going to see more of a collaborative local kind of community structure being developed over a period of time. So command and control structures concentrate power and resources in the hands of a few. A collaborative network structure will disperse power and resources to benefit the many. So these more open and nimble arrangements have the potential to make us more flexible and responsive to changing conditions if we can set them up properly. And this does not mean we won't have a global superstructure. I expect we will, particularly with technology. But I think it will need to be shift from being a support for commerce to becoming a support for a more sustainable approach to life. And I think that it will help us rebalance our relationship. It'll make commerce, I think, come more in line with the needs of the planet. At least that's what I see as possible. I know there are some efforts in the UK, I think, to already do more with the commons. Since localism will be increasingly important and people will be looking to meet many of their needs locally, many foresee a maker culture becoming a strong feature of this new world. And with localism will come more collaborative efforts, worker cooperatives, and worker-owned businesses. We'll talk about that in a minute. All of these efforts are already underway. If you're looking for a place where you can read about discussions about these kinds of efforts, resilience.org is a great one. So let's talk about finding your place. The shift we're going through will create a more egalitarian world and also bring us back down to earth by grounding us in the reality that we are a part of nature and that nature has its limits. The reality of limits, which is currently taboo, will return. The green egalitarian world is very different from the capitalistic enterprise world. Although capitalistic endeavors skills can be transformed to serve egalitarian and sustainable green purposes. The yellow starting over system will look at systems and bring our feet back on the ground so we get real about how we use energy and resources, and the wastefulness in our systems, which is quite pronounced, will have to go. The important thing to remember is that this new world will have certain characteristics. I think it'll be high on collaboration, so developing group collaboration skills is important. It'll be high on inclusion, so differences in race, religion, gender, and sexual orientation will be accepted. We're certainly on the way in terms of doing all of that. And because of the seriousness of our environmental issues, reducing consumption, conspicuous or not, will be very important, as will be rehabilitating the damage to earth and animals and restoring our natural ecology in all areas to health. Healing inner wounds so we don't keep rewounding ourselves and each other will be important also. Restoring human physical health will be very important to reduce healthcare consumption and restore joy to life. Short-sightedness will need to be replaced with long-sightedness so that we can replace our high-consuming, high-extracting economy with a long-sighted, regenerative one and not take more than we can regenerate. Sharing will be more important than accumulation. This is going to be a big change for us at the social level and at the individual level. And a personal spirituality, often connected to nature, will become more important to many people. So basically, things and stuff, including money, cannot matter more than nature and people. It's not that they don't matter. This is not a rejection of things and stuff and money. But we do have to restore a balance, a healthier attitude about what matters and what we can't. And when we can't, we do, a lot of problems will gradually clear up. It's that rebalancing that is such a big deal and an important part of what I think is coming for us. And it will be true in our personal lives as well. So how do you participate in this transition? Well, I've talked about some of the issues that are important. There may be, something in that you recognize as consistent with your skills and interests. But I wanted to share with you this TED video that I saw, How I Became a Localist, by a woman by the name of Deborah Fries. Talks about how localism created a new world, which she illuminates based on her work in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston, which is a very green mean kind of place. And in this video, she talks about local collaboration as a way to develop resources and community support. And as a result of her work, she's developed a model for these times of transition. And in the video, she discusses important roles that can facilitate our transition to the new cultural meme system as shown in the chart. We need a way to begin to participate and as a result, develop our skills, voices, and contributions. And the model shows 4 different types of roles, and that's here on this chart, that are serving this change, 2 in the system and 2 outside the system. So in the system, hospice workers who do the ongoing work of supporting a dying system, all of the structures of the capitalistic system that will still support people while we're changing. And in the system, there are also protectors, who are people who are positioned to be able to offer important resource supports to enable new organizations, cooperatives, worker initiatives, and other efforts of a more egalitarian world to develop. The example she used was a banker in the economic development area who provided funds and advice to a new green mean business in her particular area. And that's a great use of skills, knowledge, and resources within the existing system. There are always people who are ready to support, who have humanitarian values, who look forward to being able to support these kinds of new initiatives. And outside of the system, there are the trailblazers who experiment with new ideas and new techniques to create change. People on resilience.org, a lot of them are the trailblazers. An example would be tree planting organizations that are creating new ways to clean up the oceans. There are a lot of people experimenting with what a new way to do community would look like. So there's a lot of that on resilience.org as well. A lot of inventors are among the trailblazers. And finally, outside the system are the illuminators who raise awareness to enable people to see new possibilities and eventually begin to participate in a new culture. Keep in mind that you can collaborate with people in different roles. You can wear more than one hat, perhaps one in the system, one out, whatever may suit you, as you develop new ways of working and living and find your own place in this new emerging culture. There are many ways to begin. So my suggestion is that you take some time to understand your basic needs and see if you can have them under control to minimize your vulnerability to supply and other kinds of disruptions. Give some thought to what the many needs we have discussed. Where could you do something about some of them? We've been suffering from a lot of neglect in many areas. Somewhere in there may be something that is right for you to do something about. Give some thought to what matters in your life and what matters to you. See where you may become a part of this change or a part of the conversation in a way that works for you. And consider how anchoring in joy helps you rock the boat in a good way and how it can make change easier. Find others locally who are like-minded and connect with them. And so there are a lot of different ways in which you can begin to start to locate yourself within this emerging new cultural system. And, it's still emergent. So, it's not like it's going to happen overnight. So you have time, even though the earth is running out of time. There's so many people out there already doing the work. So there's plenty of places where you can connect with others. That's why I told you about resilience.org. But there are plenty of people who are trying to work on what a new culture would look like. So I hope this helps. I hope it makes you feel like, there really are some possibilities for you out there in this new emerging world. I think it's going to be a great world for sensitive people because this move towards a healthier, more thriving world is going to suit sensitive people enormously. And I think it's probably the first time in our human history that we are shifting to a world that is friendly to sensitive people. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and I wanted you all to know about that. So, Karen, any other, I'm gonna stop the share now. Any thoughts or anything that about what I discussed?
I think that what you discussed is very forward-looking, very hopeful.
Mhm.
I just, for those of us that are both highly sensitive and also a little on the older side of the spectrum,
Like me.
our ability to contribute in terms of things like helping to grow food, helping to do hard work, may be limited, and we may need support and care. And I just wonder how we can both give of what we're able to do and receive in this new culture, the support and the caregiving that we may need.
Yeah, I think that we are used to a world where as you get older, we can expect not to be so supported.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been the way it has been. And I think that first of all, if you, I mean, let me see, you're in the UK, right?
No, I'm in the US. I'm
Oh,
in
okay.
the southeast.
Where?
The southeast, Atlanta.
Okay. Okay. All right. Um, well, um, there's a website and there are books on transition towns, and people are starting to work on creating communities where they start to build more local resources and more local interdependency. And some of these efforts are rudimentary, some of them are more advanced. Um, I personally, if I was looking to find a model, I would probably go to resilience.org and try to see where I could find an experiment going on where people are trying to create interdependency. Um, so I think that I mean, if I were looking to answer that question for myself, I would be looking, first of all, to I guess I would have to make a plan on how I went about this. I would uh, try to figure out what kind of support I would need in the future, and I would also look at my own skills. So, being older doesn't mean that you lack skills. It's just you're not necessarily going to be a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly fine. So some people will be able to contribute farming skills, but other people are going to offer other skills. It could be that, as our educational system breaks down, maybe you do some teaching, or maybe you take care of, some other members of the community while other people do the farming. In other words, there's going to be a division of labor within a communal system that honors the various gifts that people have to give. And that will have to be worked out together. So having an ability to create that kind of conversation within a community, I think will be very important. And I think it's an important skill to develop, but it's also worth trying to see whether or not you have that capability within your own community, and whether or not, I mean, through meetups or whatever, you have people who are making these kinds of conversations. And there are a lot. I mean, amazes me when I look, at resilience.org, at how many people are actually out there experimenting with this. I don't think it's formal enough yet, so that may provide you with some anxiety. But I do think that we are moving in that direction. And I personally would start to look, if I really wanted that around me, to where can I identify people who are creating conscious communities. Are there courses about that?
Hmm.
I would look for courses about that. I'm sure that there are people who are offering courses in conscious community, and see if I can talk to them and figure out more about where something's going on, who I could learn from, and start to figure out what what do I have? What do I need? What, and try to get some kind of understanding of what where you're at in terms of your community and the possibilities. And then I would start to make some kind of a plan. I think you have to do some research first. You have to figure out what you need, and figure out what's possible where you are. Are you going to want to stay where you are? Are you going to want to move someplace else? That will matter. So and you need to begin to start to put that together. So I would start with the research and start having conversations with people who are doing this, if this is something I wanted to have in my community. And I would look for courses. I would look for examples of people who are already doing this, finding out what has worked, perhaps what some of the pitfalls are, and what can be done about those pitfalls. I would see it as a process. So I think it's important not to judge this process negatively because it's not fully formed. We have a system now which has either supported seniors in a particular way that may not be the way it's going to be in the future. I would be careful about over judging it as something bad or negative just because it's being formed. So it does need to you have to give it a chance to become a reality. And so that may impact how you feel about it. There's nothing wrong with trying to make sure that you have like a plan B for your basic needs. There are many different ways to meet some of your basic needs without having a community that necessarily does a lot for you. I personally recommend that everyone streamline as much as possible. I've done that myself, and I'm always doing more. If you can grow some of your own food, I highly recommend it. There are now there are some companies that are providing indoor facilities that you can buy and then grow some of your own food inside your home. So there's a lot of things that you can do. So, taking stock of your needs, what you can do yourself, what you're going to need support with, how you want to relate to your community. And, so there's a big research process there. There's also an assessment process for you. And then, you kind of have to work your way through it. So I know that's kind of all over the place. But I don't know, does that help?
Yes, it does, because I'm going to have to sit down and listen to the recording and take better notes than I've taken just now. But you've kind of laid out a roadmap for thinking about how I get from where I am to being a part of this new worldview that you're imagining, this new meme, as you're calling it, and what I can do to contribute to make it happen sooner and in a more organized, orderly fashion. And I think the other thing that I wanted to ask you was, based on your research, do you have any sense of the time frame that it's going to take for us to make this shift? I know you've said it's going to be messy, and I hear that, but do you have a sense? Because none of us are getting any younger.
Well, I'm definitely not. I'm probably older than you are. I don't know. I think that we're going to get through this election, and I think there's going to be some uproar with it, but I think that we are going to move forward. And I think that's because we're too far down the road of openness and acceptance, and that we are at a point where our need for shift for ecological reasons, it's just non-negotiable at this point. And so I think that time, in a way, our situation, the realities are on our side. So I think that we're ultimately going to get through it. I don't know how bad it's going to be. And so, I think that at the governmental level, I know in the EU, they have been looking at some commons activity. So I mentioned David Bollier of the Commons Movement. He's worth looking up. The Commons Movement is an effort to restore most natural resources and to protect various kinds of institutions like museums, educational stuff, put them in a commons for everyone's benefit, so that we can't have those people who privatize things destroying or limiting our ability to have access to our natural resources or to overconsume. And so
Mhm.
there are going to be limitations, I think, placed on consumption. And trying to make sure that works in your favor is a good thing. But the commons movement, I think, is going to be very important. I don't know if there are any people around you who are invested in the commons movement. I think there is a commons, let me see. I think there are some commons organizations online, if you would like to look into them. I think there's a commons library where they have a lot of information about the commons. David Bollier is in Amherst, Massachusetts, last time I heard, and a very smart man, but he's working with a lot of other people to create the legal framework for the commons. So this is not something that's just being talked about. It's something that people are trying to create the legal framework that will support this kind of a shift. And so there is, and I don't know how long it will take, but I think necessity is going to force a lot of things. And I have been, from what I've read, I think the next couple of decades are going to be basically when we make these big shifts, and I don't know how it's going to play out. But I do think we are going to go to a more egalitarian world and a more practical world. So I expect a lot of hierarchy will flatten. I think a lot of the resources that have been accumulated will have to be taken. I read that Bill Gates owns at least 25% of the farmland in the United States. No one person should own all that farmland. So there's
No.
a lot of rearranging of who gets to own what and all that kind of thing. That's going to be a very big deal. I don't know how it's going to play out. But I think, for us as individuals, I'm looking to start small. So I try to help people understand it so they don't feel quite so afraid and lost. And so at least they can start down that road and they have some resources to begin to think about what makes sense. Use resilience.org. You will get a lot from that. I get their daily newsletter. And their website, you can research just about anything, whether it's community ideas, all that kind of stuff. You can do all sorts of research and find different people who are doing different experiments. They also have a good podcast. Well, actually, they have several podcasts that are really good. And so you can connect with a lot of the people who are doing the work at the practical level to make things different, not just talking about it, people who are doing the practical work of how do we do this differently. So I highly recommend that. So I hope does that answer your question? I mean,
It
I
gives me,
can't tell you exactly how long, but I do
right.
think that urgency is going to force us to perhaps move more quickly. But I think the next 10 years, I think, are going to be critical. Uh, the environmental issues are not going to go away. I have read that we only have 20 to maybe 30 years of readily available oil left in the world. That's a very big deal. We knew in the 1950s that oil was going to be a problem in this country. And we actually had an environmental bill in the 1980s that got squashed. It was passed by both houses even. But anyway, be that as it may, that's a serious issue. So you're going to see an escalation of alternative energy, and efforts to make that more real. I just had our energy company was just here yesterday to try to improve energy efficiency, and that it looks like they're going to start working on improving insulation. So you're probably going to see some efforts like that. It might be worth looking in your community to see who is actually working on making things more sustainable, because it is becoming more urgent, and that might give you some information. And I've also read, this was quite some time ago, that we only have like 6 inches of topsoil left.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
yeah, in the US and in the UK. So that's an issue too. And so, it's serious. And
Mhm.
I think the seriousness of it is going to force us to act. And I think a lot of people who are used to ignoring or perhaps capitalizing on other people's needs are going to have to make some adjustments. There was a saying in the 1980s, if you want to make money, create a need. And we've been doing that now for many decades. Well, now we have so many needs, and a lot of people are making money off those needs, but all they're really doing is hurting people. When we have terrible quality food that makes people sick, so they end up paying ridiculous fees to go to the hospital, that's not okay. And so we're actually going to have to find a way to get rid of all of these invented needs. So that's another way to look at it. And how can you get rid of any needs that you don't really have to have? That would be something I would be looking at. And I do look at, I try to keep my health under control so that I'm not going to be faced with, big hospital bills as much as I can. So but I do think that, the next 20 years, I would be expecting big changes. And how that happens, I don't know. But people who are invested already in making these changes in the process, you may have some locally, will maybe give you an idea of what they're finding in terms of trying to make real some of these changes. And that might help you put a better time frame on it, at least for where you are locally.
Well, that is a lot. I mean, you've given me a lot to dig into, and I'm sure, I know right now you and I are the only two people on the call, but I'm sure other people are going to listen to the playback, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of research in this direction. And for our community, not just highly sensitive people, but also the childless community, this shift to a more community-based and less, hopefully, less nuclear family-based world, I think that's going to be a huge benefit for us, because we can contribute, even though we aren't raising children of our own. There's still so much that we can contribute to the larger community. And just being given the opportunity to do that, we have to fight for that right now. And if we can reach a place where we are seen as valuable resources instead of a drag on society, that will be a big welcome shift.
Yeah, I think that will be the case. I mean, if you're a community and you're going to have to become more self-sufficient, you're going to want all the talent you can get. You benefit from strong people. Well, childless women are generally pretty strong people after what they've been through, and many great skills. So even if, let's say your skills were in advertising, they're still problem-solving skills and whatever other skills you have developed that can be beneficial in a community. So yeah, I happen to think that right now, we don't communities, they're just these structures with these little government organizations, and they have these laws and regulations and all that kind of thing. And there's not a real strong conversation between the people and the government. I think that's going to have to change, because we are going to have more local resources for food and things like that. We're not going to be able to, for instance, as we run out of oil, we're not going to be able to have food being shipped all over the place. That's not going to work anymore. And so, what does that mean? We're going to have to grow more food locally. And things like healthcare. If there is so much oil that is used in everything in the healthcare system, whether it's the tubing or whatever, I mean, there's so much oil that's being used. What's going to replace that? I mean, we're going to have serious, very serious big changes. So you want to protect yourself by making your health as strong as possible. I use Ayurveda myself. I think it's phenomenal for that. But protect yourself as much as possible, both in terms of your basic needs and your health. And so, I think communities, as things become more difficult and perhaps they lose the ability to have resources brought in, stores probably won't be as full of goods as they were in the past. People are going to have to ask the question, how, as a community, are we going to survive together? And so, basic needs, food, that's obviously going to be one. That would be one place where people could get together and start to figure out as a community what they could do. That might be an easy way to start, in that, everyone can agree that we need food. So, that might be a good place to start. There are a lot of independent organizations all over the place, the CSAs and things like that, but, we're probably going to have to become more formal in our local structures and where we put our energy locally, rather than just relying on, big box stores and what they have to bring in. And I think we're going to have to become much more intentional about making sure that our needs get met at the local level, because we can't assume that we're going to be able to necessarily get what we need from outside the community. And 20 to 30 years before we run out of oil does give us a window. And so you could say that, okay, I'm going to streamline what I'm doing, make sure I take care of my health, and then what over this period of time can I be a part of working on that might be good for my community with others who are trying to do the same. You could take that approach, because you don't want to panic too much. You don't want to go too slow, but you don't want to go too fast and panic. So you do have, there's a couple of decades where I think it's probably relatively safe to start working on these projects, and you probably have a chance of, getting to someplace really good.
Well, thank you for all of this. I do have to go, but
Yeah, no
this has
problem.
been very informative, and I look forward to the next one and
Okay,
to reviewing this discussion.
all
Thank you
right.
so much for the work that you're doing on behalf of our community, Maria.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love doing this. You take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.